And hello everybody, my name is the Heroscape. It's honestly been a bit since I've made a video, as I've honestly been busy on the road to Scapecon and then thus celebrating and attending Scapecon itself. I've just been busy painting figures, printing things, packing, and prepping. There's a lot of prep that goes into attending this con. But I'm back, and I've had the chance to rearrange my layout, get a new outlook on life, and I thought I'd just give a little brief retrospective on my time there at the events. This is going to go on some rabbit trails, and honestly, it's not scripted, which I always I always struggle to do in a linear fashion. But we're going to dive into it, see what Scapecon has to offer, and kind of just talk about my experiences. So first off, if you don't know what Scapecon is, it's a fan-led, fan-made, entirely grassroots Heroscape convention located in a hotel in Indianapolis, or on the outskirts thereof, that is entirely focused on playing the game of Heroscape, as the name implies. It's a really great time because people from all over the world sometimes show up to play the game of Heroscape. Heroscape historically has been a game sustained by the fans. The fans are the ones that create the homebrew, the ideas, the kind of layout for this game, creating a more fun, casual experience into a very competitive and cohesive and fun game. Especially now that it's officially supported, I think even more interest has been generated by these bespoke fans to kind of go together and celebrate one of the best games ever made, in my humble opinion. So it's just this group of people just kind of going together, really just great crowd of people. And it's honestly, I would say, just probably the most concentrated form of Heroscape one can get. You're playing events, usually 2 events at a time that you have to choose from morning to nighttime. And then at nighttime, you're talking with the fellow Heroscapers about Scape and similar interests. So it is, I would say, the pinnacle of the Heroscape experience. I went last year, my first time, and honestly, I've been kind of hooked ever since. I am naturally an introvert and struggle to even kind of leave my house sometimes. And you can, imagine my friends and family shock when I pack up the car and leave my house for upwards of a week just to go to this conference. And to me, it doesn't even take a second thought. It's, I love the game and I love the people. And so it's kind of an easy decision to drive the 8 hours up there and make all the effort to get there. If you're never been, it's hard to describe kind of the extent of just how awesome it is, how there's very little gatekeeping, where people just kind of accept you, and they know a lot about the game. There's not a lot of, there's some of the top players in the world, some people who wrote the rule books, or some people who designed actual figures in the game playing this conference, but they're all very open and very accepting of your level in the game. They're willing to point out where you do things wrong, but they're not going to make you feel bad about it. So now it's kind of like the overview. Let's kind of dive into more of the specific events of kind of what I did. There's a lot going on. I'm not lying. When you wake up early and you play late, it's hard to keep track of specific details. So I'm going to do my best memory for counting what happened. Honestly, there may be some errors or mistakes, or I say things wrong, but this is just my initial memory and vibes of the overall event. So I rode into town in Indianapolis Tuesday night after an 8-hour drive, as I mentioned before, which thankfully gives me enough time to just unload my car. Now, when you go to Scapecon, you have the option of, pre-planning all your armies and bringing just that. Many people who are flying in from around just kind of bring what they can. But if you have the opportunity of living close or driving in, you can kind of bring whatever you want. I brought nearly every Heroscape figure I owned and just loaded in the back of my truck and then went on the road. I was thankfully had a room with Mega Bubfish. If you don't know, they run a channel and stream a lot of Heroscape games, as it was fun just to talk to them about some of the events. They streamed almost 24/7 the entire time the events were running. Didn't even choose to play, so I respect that, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if I have that amount of gumption to hop in and talk for so long. So just got settled in. Wednesday, following Wednesday, is kind of when the main events start. And first off, just woke up early. There's really only one main event on Wednesday, which is Three-Headed Hydra, but there's also map building, which is a fun time where the escapers get together and build maps. I am absolutely terrible at building maps, so I volunteered and helped where I could, but I wasn't very good at it. I get easily confused with those hexagon layouts. I would love some kind of updated interface in the future, so I might be a bit better at that. But then on to Three-Headed Hydra. That is a team event where you and essentially a team of 3 go up together against an opposing team of 3. Based off a D20 roll, you get to decide if you are going to ban 2 selective armies from fighting each other, or if you are going to be able to select the maps. It's kind of one-on-one, so each team kind of breaks off into individual pairs to kind of try to get the best kind of opponent based off those die rolls. I had some new people I haven't met before on my team, but we did really good. We've decided we want to be a team for life, and we honestly did fairly well in the event, 3-1, and just under enough to get top cut, but we had a very fun time in the event. I was running Thyrax's Osaga and some Nagrubs, just a whole field of them, and it was good, but it wasn't too good into the meta. My dice were not working most of the time, as I wasn't able to hit really many rolls I needed to, or repeated whiffs. And that's the thing to remember about Scapecon, is that Heroscape is a game where the better players perform more consistently, but it is ultimately a game that is dictated by a dice outcome. And some days or some weeks, in my case, the dice betray you, and you just aren't doing really well. There was one point later in the week where I think I rolled 7 whiffs in a row, neither skulls nor shields, when I was attacking or defending. And it's tough, regardless of your great plan, to come back from that. So I think the biggest thing, side tangent here, is that don't get miffed if you attend Scapecon at the D20s or the dice. Ultimately, I describe it as a place where losing has never been so fun. So Three-Headed Hydra went really well. Honestly, the best part was just meeting up with my team and getting to know them a bit better. And we did fairly well. I ran into some poor matchups or just had some stuff going on, but ultimately my team picked up the place when they needed to, and I picked it up when I needed to, and we did fairly decent. I'm happy with our standing, as there was some really strong opposition, a lot of people playing into more of a stronger meta. So it's nice to have a bit of that versatility. That's sort of the big event. I think later that night I ended up playing cribbage, as Heroscape, when the main events, with Scapecon, when the main events end, people usually break off and play games. So I play cribbage, as I play that a lot with my wife, and people are always kind of leaning over like, oh, is that cribbage? I thought that was like an old person's game type of deal. So the people usually break out some fun board games, and that was fun playing that. Again, not very good luck in that game, but I was catching up. I think I didn't have too many wins this week. Wasn't the year for me. Honestly, I've played a lot more competitive online since my last Scapecon, which I actually think I did a little bit better. But I just didn't have the luck on my side. So that's kind of Wednesday, is kind of the intro day at this Three-Headed Hydra. If you're planning a trip into Scapecon, it's a day that can be skipped, but honestly, Three-Headed Hydra is one of my favorite things, just because there is typically no other team events in Scapecon, and it's nice collaborating with your teammates and going against your opponents in that regard. Thursday is where things get a little bit more interesting here. A fun event called Thunderdome. Essentially, there is a big chart filled with a list of individual characters that you are allowed to bring into the titular Thunderdome. And when you're there, essentially, you do a mano-a-mano battle against your figure, against another figure. These figures all have boosted stats, and they aren't intended to be balanced or fair. Some definitely had the edge on others, but it was a great way to just dive in and roll large amounts of dice, almost like Marvel level of dice. Just to really pass the time. So Thursday, I did the Delta Bring 2 First Crack Rule of 9. I love some of these names as they just, you know, they don't hold back on, they're like anime titles. So you pretty much roll 20s based off the rule. You either select one of your opponent's armies or defer, ultimately giving you pick of the remaining 3 armies at the end of the pool. So it's a format that allows you to play 1 with other people's armies, and 2, just kind of mixes it up a bit. Any format that has, you know, multiple options to choose from, I always try to do, because sometimes you just build a bad army, and there's nothing worse than kind of being stuck in an army that wasn't properly planned out or not properly landed into the meta. And so you have some options, so you have some versatility to adapt throughout the day. Let's see how I do on that one. That one I didn't do the best on, but I could have done a lot worse. I ran 2 and 3 for the event, so 2 wins, 3 losses. 1 was pretty close. I could have picked up maybe 3 and 2, but it's a really fun event. And I was running Queen Maladrix, Heirloom, Festering Honor Guard, Dumatef, and Tango as Samurai ×3. So a really fun. That was my first army, and then my second army was Sentinels ×3, Atlaga, and Konkan. Now I think that second army wasn't as powerful as my first one, as the only wins I got was from that Maladrix army. And with the pick 2 format, you definitely have to have a very equal power level. It's kind of what I found out, is that you don't want one of your armies to be very bad and one to be really good, as it just kind of limits your options. You need to build 2 very good or 2 very bad armies ultimately, but not have one kind of counter the other. Like ultimately my Maladrix army kind of countered the Sentinel army, so it didn't give a lot of versatility for those options. And if people pick that, then I'm playing against my own good army. So you really have to kind of balance that, but still 2 wins and 3 losses I'm not terribly upset with. Maladrix definitely performed really well in those events. You know, just getting that 5 attack turns with the support from the Tagla, not a half bad time. Honestly, I was happy with that, and I think if I had a bit more luck and a better second army, I might have been able to squeak a little bit more wins out. And so that's 5 rounds, 55 minutes each, so you can kind of see the time of how long that takes. Usually there's, after the 3rd or 4th round, there's a break for lunch, or a break for breakfast or whatever. And so it's nice to have a little bit of break throughout the day. And then after that one, what I did, General Wars Lieutenant, where this one's kind of fun, where you have to select only units from one general, and then you just have to select, or you get to select a lieutenant. That lieutenant turns all blanks into skulls. So some very unique armies. I went into this one. I was running 10th Reg with Tandros. My weakness as a player is I like wacky characters or units that aren't used that much, and I like to play them even knowing that they don't always play well in the meta. I was like, I really like Tandros, even though he's not the best unit, and I had some theory that maybe he could stand by and help the 10th Reg, but ultimately I think I could have picked some better units. This is another one that uses VC, so if you're not familiar with VC, it's a kind of fan-made units that really expand the both unit possibilities, so it's hard to fully plan what you'll see. It kind of doubles almost the available units to play in the game, and also creates some new synergies where some units that don't work become a whole lot more viable. I think I faced against, let's see who did I go against, like snipers, I want to say for this one. I faced against like Ordo. This is some very different ones here. I think I even went in with, I'm trying to remember, let's see, what I faced against Eisenex, so there's a lot of variety in that one. Ultimately, in this event, I did okay. This is a big event here. I had to cut this one short because I was prepping for other things, but I went 1 and 2 in that event, so I wasn't doing the best, and I had to end up dropping, which sometimes you have to do just because of what we'll be talking on next. Painting Masterclass. Essentially, at nighttime, this is more I get to flex off a day of losing into something I'm a bit more comfortable with. It was essentially a master class where I taught a group of people how to paint Decker from beginning to relative end. Decker, as you know, is provided unpainted, and Renegade was kind enough to provide him as a door prize. I wanted to make sure that people went home with as little unpainted Deckers as possible. He was a great unit to begin teaching people with, and it was kind of crazy. There was I was expecting like 6 or 7 people, honestly, to show up to this thing, and we ended up with 22. So I had all the paint supplies, and we kind of walked a bunch of newcomers and veterans alike in the painting world through painting Decker. It was a really great time, and people seem to be relatively inspired by the events. I'm saying that they'll go home, pick up some acrylics and paints of their own and start learning to paint, and others just were longtime users who just of the painting world and just said they learned some things. So ultimately that was one of my highlights of the con, is that there is option if you have a fun idea or if you have a certain set of skill that you want to run like a side event. You can. They're very open. The team that runs the Scapecon is very open to new ideas. It's not like a restrictive box in, within reason. Like, they want to make sure everything flows and doesn't disrupt the overall conference. But, I had this idea, I ran with it, and I think it went really, really well. Honestly, it was just fun teaching these people how to paint, and then afterwards is kind of hanging together, painting together, just more casually and not in a structured environment. It was a really fun time. I started at 4:30 and I went until about 10, just kind of yelling and talking to people the entire time. So time just flew. And yeah, it was an absolute blast. It's definitely something I plan on running in the future when I go back to future Scapecons. And painting has always been kind of like not a part of Heroscape in times past, just because it's the game that most people played because it was pre-painted. But now it's kind of been opened up with lots more unpainted units in the game, as well as 3D printing becoming more popular. I think it's a great skill to have, and honestly, I love teaching people how to do things. So it was just an encouraging event, both for me and I think for those who attended, if I can go so far as to say. Honestly, if I can do a little side tangent, I was kind of just feeling overwhelmed and discouraged going into Scapecon, just with so much commissions, so much painting, and just, my personal life, just feeling very unhappy with a lot of end results of what I've been painting recently. After Scapecon, I've just received so many encouraging words from people, just saying that they watch my content, that I've helped them get started painting, that they love what I do. And I'm never looking for praise or any of that kind of stuff, but it's just nice when people solicit to you freely and provide that encouragement. But honestly, it motivated me to kind of get out of the slump, rearrange my whole layout, as you probably see, and just kind of keep on doing this because I love it. It's a niche within a niche, but ultimately it's because of the kind, caring people that I continue to do this. So thank you all who gave me the compliments. They really did touch my heart and give me a bit of much needed motivation and encouragement. All right, so after Thursday is Friday. I decided to not do the reverse whip championship and opt in for 30 more minutes of sleep and did the VCB and under superstars event. Where you pretty much can't use the top cut of both VC and classic units, which is fine. It was a smaller group that did that. I was overslept and unfortunately didn't have time to plan a good army, so I just ran Breach, Boreos, Van Essing, and Town Hall. Not a very good army. I think I went 1 and 3 for that event. Honestly, I just always underestimate how many squads are going to show up, and my dice weren't good enough to justify such a small army. The advantage of this army is I only had to carry 4 figures around, as I forgot some sort of carrying box, and that was the best part of my army. But otherwise, it was a bad pick all around. I probably could have gone just a little bit better and tightened up my my workload just a bit. Yeah, sometimes you just pick bad stuff just to try them out, and did not work for me. But I sneaked one win in against some acolytes against Heroes of the Scape, and it was still a fun time. Even losing, I realized I made some mistakes halfway through the event. Well, I realized I made some mistakes as I brought my army breach Boreos, Van Essing, and Talon Goal, and then my opponent dumped out 5 Marten Hounds, which counters pretty much everything my army had to offer, as the Hounds ignore the movement restrictions from Boreos, as the Hounds can auto-damage my big bulky breach, as they have enough movement to get to Talon Goal, and Van Essing just did not have enough firepower to keep up with them. So they just decimated me in that regard, and it was kind of a slow downhill from there. And I did Delta Battle for Middle Earth. This was a really fun event where you had kind of a pre-selected faction that you had to build like 250 points of Heroscaepe figures into, kind of based off, Lord of the Rings factions, like Kings of Erebor were the dwarfs ×2 and Mygol that you had to add to your army. Or you had Orcs of the White Hand, Heavies ×2 Ornak. I went with Elves of the Wood, Aubrians ×3 Savaras, as I felt like they played into a lot of things that had to offer. And that one I did a little bit better standing at 2-2, as I had some good matchups and I had some bad matchups. And ultimately, the Aubrians are just not a fun unit to play against, is what I realized, and I apologize to my opponents, because for some reason my D20 was super hot that day. At one point, I frenzied 3 times in a row in one game, and another time I frenzied like 6. And I was in a losing state, and when you frenzy 6 times in a row, there's nothing your opponent can do to stop it, and it's just a relatively unfun experience. So I apologize about that one. It was fun winning, but it wasn't fun, I'm sure, for my opponent. And because my D20 was hot, I kept on rolling like 15, 16, 17, and I had Haduk in my army, and he was just boosting, and then I had the loading glyph at a certain point, so it just kind of was, incrementally snowball, because I was kind of up against the ropes, and then it kind of went downhill real fast. But it was nice to get some wins in, and it was just a fun event in general. Just everything Lord of the Rings themed is always fun. I actually had a old HeroClix Legolas I replaced for my Sepharis, who I threw in my army. And that's where my good luck came from, I assume. And then originally I was going to do the Kill Your Squill event, where I had some pretty spicy armies to play, where you have to bring the worst things possible. But then my teammates for Three-Headed Hydra kind of convinced me to drop out of that and instead go with them to downtown Indianapolis to a place called Fogo de Chãos, a Brazilian steakhouse where they serve you unlimited, freshly butchered cuts of meat, and a buffet featuring salmon, roasted mushrooms, charcuterie boards. Let's just put it simply, I cried when I ate the food because I forgot to get, I didn't want to get a meal ticket at the con, so I've been kind of scavenging, Cheez-Its and some other food for the duration of the week, and let me tell you, pretty good. Pretty good food, absolutely insane actually. They just casually cut off a slice of filet mignon, and it's fun. If at this point of this Scapecon, I think it's healthy to take breaks. The group I went with was really pleasant, really made some great connections, and just talked a lot about just kind of the game, but also just each other. Really was encouraging just to kind of be included in that group, as I just recently met them. But the trip downtown was just absolutely delightful. Downtown Indianapolis is a little sketchy, but the food well made up for it. I literally had to be, I think, rolled home. I ate so much steak. They literally just like, here, you want some filet mignon? And they cut it right off the spit onto your plate, and it's unlimited. I definitely got my money's worth that day, and just had a great time, just getting out and talking to some new people I've never met before. All right, and so after Friday, kind of a full belly of food, went into Saturday. Actually slept through the first event because I think I just had a meat coma from Fogos, where I just woke up and I was like, oh wow, I slept through 2 alarms, did not make it to the event, which was a Into the Future event, which I wanted to try out. But I was able to then go into a unique event called Security Breach Rule of 12. Essentially, you have to have a minimum of 4 cards in your army, and each round you and your opponent simultaneously get to select 1 order marker for the respective opponents. So lots of strategy. I went with a full Wormling build just to kind of make full use of that order marker usage. But again, I countered some Marten Hounds that just were my nemesis this con, as they kind of just, the Wormlings couldn't cut through them and had some other bad matchups, so it didn't do as well with that one. I think I went 1 and 3 for that one as well. A lot of 1 and 3s, 2 and 2s for this Scapecon, and that's okay. I had a good time rolling dice. And after Security Breach, this is the last day, I figured I'd do a night event. I did Toxic Mist. Essentially, Toxic Mist is a really fun mode of play where you have each level end of round 1, you have to roll 1 attack die, and if you get a skull, you get an automatic wound, and it progressively raises with each round. So round 2, all units on level 2 have to risk that wound, and then ultimately there's no more save. So I had some fun matches in that one. It's kind of night events are fun to play because there's not a lot of stakes associated with them. I had some really, really abysmal luck on these ones, where to the point where people were, feeling bad for my rolls, where they were just like, man, I'm sorry, this is statistically almost impossible what you're rolling. One especially memorable game was where I was facing off against a feral troll, and it was down to the wire. I had my Major X17, who wasn't a good pick, but I like that guy. I try to bring him whenever I can. Major X17 facing off a feral troll who would just not go down. I take a wound from Toxic Mist, and he heals immediately after the round, thus resulting in a loss of 5 points. So I almost had that one. But I was running Eisenex with X17 and some Death Reavers, really for no other reason than I wanted to show off my cool paints I did for them, and I just like playing the Eisenex, even though they are kind of, they burn fast and then die out kind of towards the end game. Of course, there was another game where I just only killed only two Death Chasers the entire game, and that one wasn't too good. The Hellforge was not eating things up that one. And thus, that was kind of the end of Scapecon. I spent that night packing up and loading up my mini boxes into my minivan for the long journey home. And all in all, this was a great Scapecon. Considerably better than last year, mainly because I wasn't feeling very sick, very not well the whole time. I feel great. Haven't been put out for 2 weeks after the convention. I think moving the dates to an earlier time certainly has helped with that. Not so close with Gen Con. I'm going to Gen Con later this year, so I'm hoping that I am still able to stay healthy in that regard. But overall, just really, I cannot express just how encouraging people were when they approached me about my work and the things I do. That people were just kind of saying, oh, can I watch you paint? Or I love what you do. And that's just kind of aside from the fun events of all the Heroscape, just kind of in one just location. I've got so many games played, and even though I didn't have the best showing, I had a really great time. I always say that Scapecon is a place where losing never has felt so good. So I lost, and I felt good the entire way through. And I had some really great memorable moments just, with interacting with people, talking to people. I've talked to so many people, gotten so many ideas. I feel refreshed and reinvigorated, willing to keep on doing this little side thing I've been enjoying doing for so long. I'm excited for what is to come in store for next year with all the new stuff released and how that affects how people play. And ultimately, I'm just happy to be a fan of this awesome game. Heroscape has been around for a while, and I've been playing it for a while, but it's kind of when you go to these dedicated conventions, you really kind of get to see your passion and your interests pay off with like-minded people. Scapecon 5 is a generational one for the books. If you have never been, I definitely encourage you to try to make it out to one if you enjoy playing the game and want to meet some amazing people. Side note, just want to thank you to the tournament organizers and operators who made this happen. They do incredible unpaid and unspoken work, and just use my platform just to thank you all for your dedication to ensuring really an excellent convention for myself and I'm sure for everyone else who attended. There's a whole bunch of work done on kind of the higher levels of staff there, and it's all very professional and very fun. You know, a simple kind of fun that is just enjoyable to have. I loved it through and through. It was a one for the ages. The only thing that can make this better is theoretically Gen Con 6, which I am wholeheartedly looking forward to going to next year.